One officer was kneeling on the back of his neck, got tired, and was replaced the same position even after I asked them if he was asleep.
A day after that, we heard for the first time the term excited delirium.
Many experts say the theory is not a diagnosis, and those that believe in excited delirium say that the body gets so worked up that it just shuts down. In investigating this series with our sister station, KUSA in Denver, we found a number of cases across the nation where law enforcement applied their weight to someone in a prone position, and their cause of death was labeled as excited delirium. Investigative reporter Andy Judson joins us again with part 2 of this investigation.
Yeah, Alex, as we looked at cases from across the country, we were able to create a first-of-its-kind database looking at incidents similar to Angelo's from the past 10 years. And tonight, you'll get a deeper look at the nationwide cases and what they all have in common. Here's an investigative reporter, Chris Vanderveen.
On a busy road, a damaged car slowed to a stop.
The whole innocent until proven guilty, I learned, is not the way that it works.
Inside, an incoherent and sweating profusely man appeared dazed.
Bob Rigg was my husband.
He was my dad.
Judy and Jenny knew Bob was no drunk, no addict, and yet
My life just shattered at that day.
minutes after the 2009 crash, police suspected Rigg was under the influence when, handcuffed and in the back seat of a police car, he stopped breathing.
It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
The officer who arrested him concluded, yeah, I think it's excited delirium.
I didn't really know what it was. I think we had a very long conversation just trying to understand what excited delirium was.
Excited delirium, a potentially fatal and oftentimes drug-fueled consequence, some believe, of a body's inability in essence to slow itself down. Journals like this suggest it's marked by bizarre behavior and sweating, among other things. Yeah, like Bob Rigg. Problem is,
Did your father die of excited delirium?
No, he didn't.
Bob Rigg experienced something far less theoretical.
He's not a drug addict. He was a diabetic and he was low. Both of them were just shocked when I told him he was a diabetic.
Yes, diabetes, a chronic disease shared by nearly 40 million Americans. Rigg's blood sugar had collapsed. He needed medical care, not a trip to jail. Our investigation, a first-of-its-kind analysis, has now linked more than 135 deaths across the U.S. since 2010 to the words excited delirium. We found excited delirium written into autopsy reports, police reports, and court filings. And even if you believe excited delirium exists, which many critics do not, our investigation has uncovered example after example where suspicion of it turned out to be wrong.
Guess who gets ketamine?
Yeah, seriously.
2018, Colorado Springs, Colorado. Suspecting excited delirium, a paramedic injects Jerica LaCour with ketamine. A medical examiner concludes that, and not excited delirium, contributed to her death.
Stop. I have a right to stop you because you're being suspicious.
2019, Aurora, Colorado.
So when the ambulance gets here, we're going to go ahead and give him all the cops.
Elijah McLean receives ketamine.
So I'm with excited delirium.
After an incorrect diagnosis, he stopped breathing minutes later.
0 suspicion.
Late last year, Adams County deputies suspected
They're trying to kill me.
as they restrain a man undergoing a severe mental health crisis, face down and strapped down into a gurney for 16 minutes. Arthur Roybal dies not long after. Why?
This was, in my mind, a classic case of positional asphyxia.
Dr. Bill Smock, a nationally recognized expert in the use of force, says it's far too common for officers to think they're seeing excited delirium when something else is taking place.
Did you consider other possibilities as causes that you evaluated and dismissed as unlikely?
Absolutely.
It's what he told the jury in the trial of the officer now convicted of murdering George Floyd. You might not know it, but excited delirium.
I just worry about the excited delirium or whatever.
That term explains, in part, why Minneapolis officers held Floyd face down in 2020. Dr. Smock says excited delirium had nothing to do with Floyd's death.
He was conversing with the officers. He was telling them he couldn't breathe. Was his speech understandable? Yes. Was it incoherent? No.
He says suspicion of excited delirium can cause officers to do some really dumb things, like continuing to hold a suspect face down for too long.
Once they're handcuffed, they are not a threat to you. Put them on their side. No one dies on their sides from positional asphyxia.
Our database includes more than 116 million in settlements and verdicts. Nearly half of those on our list died after prolonged prone or face-down restraint. More than half received electric jolts from stun guns or tasers. People like Paul Silva in California, Ronald Green in Louisiana, and Manny Ellis in Washington State.
You embrace myths because they benefit you in some way to embrace them.
Michael Freeman says it's time to retire the term, mostly because of this study he co-authored. There is no existing evidence that indicates excited delirium is inherently lethal in the absence of aggressive restraint. In other words,
when there's law enforcement involved and the death occurs during restraint, that's when the term excited delirium is invoked.
It's all left people like Judy Rigg to wonder, what if?
It'll be 14 years, September 9th, that Bob passed away, and I still play those scenarios.
We found to this day the Lakewood Police Department warns its officers of bizarre and irrational behavior, adding people with excited delirium may die regardless of what actions are taken by the police.
I have kids that's never met my dad. My husband never met my dad.
What, she wonders, will finally convince officers they may very well be dead wrong?
We want to say that it doesn't bother us, but it does. It just, we kind of continue moving on. But yeah, we do think about that a lot.
Now back home here in California, we could become the first state in the country to ban the use of excited delirium as a cause of death. AB 360 was approved by the California Judiciary Committee with a unanimous vote. And on Monday, it went to the Senate Appropriations Committee. And there's a strong bipartisan support for it, and it could go all the way to Governor Newsom's desk to sign. Alex.
And Andy, with the database that you guys are creating, are there any trends that you're seeing right now?
Yeah, actually, just 2 months ago, the National Association of Medical Examiners, which creates guidance for coroners across the nation, they announced they do not endorse the use of excited delirium as a cause of death. And a trend we found in the cases we've gathered is that coroners and medical examiners wrote the words excited delirium in about 70% of cases we examined. So for them now to not endorse the term is just really stunning and will likely make a huge change.
Thank you, Andy, for your investigation. And if you do want to see both parts of this investigation, make sure you go to our website, abc10.com/to-the-point.